Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. This time, we're going to be looking at packing for cruises.
Ooh, fun.
I know, right? It's something that everybody has to deal with, and there's always so much anxiety around it. So we're going to be looking at this article called "The Only Cruise Packing List You'll Ever Need" by Trish Schickling from the Influencer Jupiter magazine.
Okay.
And hopefully this will help us all be a little bit less stressed next time we're packing. So to start out, one of the things that I think is so interesting is most cruise lines don't actually have like a hard and fast luggage limit.
Yeah.
They just say, keep it reasonable.
Reasonable.
But what is reasonable?
Well, like how much is too much?
Yeah, because like I'm thinking, if I'm going on a weekend cruise
Right.
versus a 2-week cruise, obviously like reasonable is going to be different for those two.
Totally. Yeah. And like, what if you're flying to the port? You have to worry about the airlines too.
Exactly. So that's something to keep in mind. But what I thought was really interesting is that Trish points out that if you're leaving from Florida, you don't have to deal with the TSA liquid restriction.
Ah, it's awesome.
I know, right?
Wow.
Like that's a huge perk. So, no more like tiny little bottles of shampoo. You can just bring the full size.
Yeah. That's so much better.
I wonder, though, if there are other ports around the world that have similar advantages. That would be something I'd have to look into.
Yeah, definitely. For sure.
So another thing that she talks about is toiletries in general.
Okay.
And, she emphasizes the importance of bringing like your everyday essentials, especially if you have sensitive skin or you're, particular about certain brands, because you don't want to end up using something that irritates your skin or that you just don't like.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to find specific brands or products when you're traveling.
Exactly. So it's definitely a good idea to bring your own stuff. But one thing I will say, though, is it's also worth checking with your cruise line to see what they provide.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because some cruise lines might actually offer higher-end brands or even have shops on board where you can buy what you need.
Yeah, that's true.
But on that note, something that I always worry about when I'm packing toiletries is, if you're checking your bags, the possibility of glass breaking.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So it's always a good idea to either pack fragile items really carefully or just opt for travel-size plastic containers.
That's smart.
And another thing that Trish mentioned that I thought was really important is to make sure that you bring any children's medications that you might need,
Oh, yeah. That's a good reminder.
because apparently a lot of cruise ships have limited supplies of those.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so if you're traveling with little ones, it's better to be safe than sorry.
Definitely.
All right, so let's move on to shoes,
Okay.
which I feel like is always a source of anxiety when it comes to packing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But Trish has a pretty simple guideline. She suggests bringing one pair each of dress shoes, athletic shoes, sandals, and flip-flops.
Okay, that's a good starting point. But what if you're going on like a themed cruise or you have multiple formal nights planned?
That's a great question, and she does mention that if your sandals are slip-on style, you can probably skip the flip-flops.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're going on a themed cruise or if you have a lot of formal events, you might want to consider bringing an extra pair of dress shoes or sandals, just to have more options.
That makes sense.
And of course, comfort is key. You're going to be doing a lot of walking on the ship and in port, so you don't want to be stuck with shoes that are hurting your feet.
Definitely not.
So speaking of exploring, let's talk about dinner attire,
Okay.
which I know can be confusing because cruise lines have all these different dress codes, like casual, smart casual, formal. But it's not always clear what those actually mean.
Right. Yeah. Like, what does smart casual even mean?
Exactly. But Trish has a really good guideline, she says, to think of it as dressing nicer than poolside for most evening meals.
Okay. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so basically, no shorts, no bathing suits, no flip-flops in the main dining rooms.
Makes sense.
It's all about respecting the ambiance and creating a more enjoyable dining experience for everyone.
Right.
And of course, many cruises also have at least one elegant night where dressing up is encouraged.
Oh, yeah. Those are always fun.
Yeah, it's a chance to get a little fancy. But I think it's important to emphasize that it's not mandatory. If you're not into the whole formal wear thing, you can totally skip it.
Yeah, for sure.
Now let's talk about swimsuits,
Okay.
which is another one of those things that people always seem to overpack.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that.
But Trish has a good rule of thumb. She suggests bringing 2 for shorter cruises and more for longer ones.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And she also mentions the benefits of quick-drying swimsuits,
Oh, yeah. Those are a lifesaver.
especially if you're planning to swim frequently or go on shorter excursions, because nobody wants to pack a wet swimsuit.
Ah, no, it's the worst.
So we've covered toiletries, shoes, dinner attire, and swimsuits. What are your thoughts so far?
Well, I really appreciate that she's focusing on practicality and versatility. It's not about bringing your entire wardrobe. It's about choosing pieces that can be mixed and matched and that are appropriate for a variety of occasions.
Exactly. It's about being prepared without overpacking.
Right.
So with that in mind, I'm excited to dive into some of her other tips and tricks.
Me too.
There's still so much to unpack.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we're back talking about cruise packing. And one thing that I think is really important is figuring out what to wear on shore excursions.
Yeah, that's tricky.
It is, because you want to be prepared for anything,
Yeah.
but you also don't want to be lugging around a giant backpack all day.
Exactly.
And Trish has a really good point about this. She says that you should prioritize comfortable and practical shoes, especially shoes that can handle different types of terrain.
Oh, yeah.
You might be walking on cobblestones one day and then hiking through a rainforest the next.
That's so true. I learned that the hard way.
Oh no, what happened?
I went on a cruise a while back and all I packed was sandals.
Oh no?
Yeah, and my feet were killing me after a day of walking around,
Right.
especially exploring ancient ruins and stuff.
Ouch. So what kind of shoes do you think are best for shore excursions?
Well, it depends on what you're doing, of course. But I think a good pair of sneakers or walking shoes is essential. And if you're planning on going to the beach or swimming, water shoes are a must.
Those are great suggestions. And she also talks about the importance of layers. Even if you're going somewhere warm, you should always pack a lightweight jacket or sweater.
Right, because the weather can be unpredictable.
Exactly.
Mm.
And you might encounter a chilly evening breeze, or the AC on the ship can be really strong.
Oh, yeah. I always pack a pashmina, just in case.
That's a good idea. And it doesn't take up much space either. Okay, so we talked about dressing nicer than poolside for most dinners. But what about elegant night?
Ooh, elegant night.
What do you recommend for that?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity to dress up.
Yeah.
But it's not a fashion show. You don't need to go all out and buy a whole new wardrobe.
Right. It's more about just having fun and embracing the occasion.
Exactly. And Trish has a good tip for this. She says to pack a few versatile accessories, like a statement necklace or some sparkly earrings. Oh, that's a good idea. And they don't take up much room in your suitcase.
Exactly.
Speaking of saving space, she's a big proponent of rolling your clothes instead of folding them.
Oh, the age-old debate.
I know, right?
Ah,
But I have to say, I've converted to rolling. It really does save a lot of space.
me too. And it helps prevent wrinkles.
That's a good point. She also recommends using packing cubes.
Oh, packing cubes are the best.
I know, right? They keep everything so organized.
Yeah, it's like having mini drawers in your suitcase.
Okay, so let's talk about embarkation day. Because your luggage might not arrive at your stateroom right away.
Right.
So what do you suggest people pack for that?
Well, Trish has a really smart solution. She says to pack a separate small bag with all of your essentials for that first day.
Oh, okay.
So things like swimsuits, sunscreen, medications, important documents, a change of clothes.
That's so smart.
That way you can head straight to the pool or grab a bite to eat
Oh,
without having to wait for your luggage.
I can't believe I've never thought of that before.
I know, right? It's such a game changer.
It really is.
So we've talked a lot about what to pack. But what about what not to pack? Are there any things that Trish says we should leave at home?
Well, you know, it's funny you should ask that. Because she has a whole section dedicated to packing don'ts.
Oh, really? I'm intrigued. Tell me more. Okay, so tell me about these packing don'ts. What are some things that Trish says we should leave at home?
Well, one of the things she mentioned that surprised me is beach towels.
Really?
Yeah, she says that most cruise lines actually provide beach towels for you.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you can use them both on board and on their private islands.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, beach towels take up so much space in your suitcase.
Exactly.
And it's one less thing to worry about getting wet and sandy.
Ooh. Plus, if you really want a beach towel, you can always buy one as a souvenir.
Oh, that's a good idea. What else is on the don't pack list?
Hair dryers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently most cabins have hair dryers already.
I guess that makes sense.
So unless you have a very specific type of hair dryer that you can't live without, it's probably best to just leave yours at home.
Right. Any other surprises?
Expensive jewelry.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
It's just not worth the risk of losing it or damaging it while you're traveling.
And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, about dressing up for elegant night.
Yeah.
You don't need to wear your most expensive jewelry to look glamorous.
Exactly.
So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you think our listeners should keep in mind when they're packing for a cruise?
Well, I would say a first aid kit is always a good idea.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Just pack some basic stuff like bandages, pain relievers, motion sickness medication. You never know when you might need it.
That's a great reminder. And I always pack snacks, too, especially if I have a long travel day.
Oh yeah, snacks are essential.
And if you have any dietary restrictions, it's definitely a good idea to bring your own food.
Definitely. And finally, I would just say, don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're feeling overwhelmed or you're not sure what to pack, reach out to a travel agent or a cruise line representative.
That's a good tip. They can give you some personalized advice. Well, I think that about covers it. We've given our listeners a lot to think about. Hopefully this will make packing for their next cruise a little bit easier.
I hope so.
So bon voyage, everyone, and happy cruising.